you should care how the AI services think about you personally, your brand. Go to ChatGPT, put your own stuff in, and just see what that is, and keep that as a point of reference that, like, hey, when you're making new content, will this influence that? It is the easiest it's ever going to be to influence and to get the information right about your company and yourself. And these are growing at a tremendous pace. Like, it is obvious, again, just like Google has made the decision that, like, this is the future. It's just where we're all going.
This is Personal Brand Blueprint with me, your host, Dave Polikoff, where I sit down with proven experts who've built successful personal brands to break down how they did it, so you know the exact blueprint on how to build a personal brand that attracts attention, builds trust, and converts your dream clients online. We get super specific. I'm talking real-time feedback on what social channels to be on, what marketing strategies to implement, and what content is capturing and converting the most attention on social. How do we do this? Because Personal Brand Blueprint is powered by ZenPost, your content partner for research-driven strategy and done-for-you video that helps you be seen, be trusted, and win more business. Whether you need more guidance on how to create client-attracting content yourself, or you need a professional creative team to create and publish your content for you, ZenPost is your strategic content partner. If you're ready to increase your visibility, followers, and leads through video content, then head over to zenpost.com today to learn more. Now, let's get into the show. If I had $1 for every time someone came to me and said, Dave, I don't want to post on social media, I don't want to have an online presence, whether it be for, security reasons, I don't want my information out there, I don't want people to know what I'm doing, I don't want people to know that I'm on vacation, or they just despise social media in general. And so they hide from it, they abstain from it, and yet that is why they are not able to be found on it for better or worse, right? Clients are going to look you up, see if they want to work with you. They want to see what kind of work you've done. They want to see if they're going to vibe with you as a coach or consultant. And that could be the reason why they're moving to your competitors instead of using you. And so this is a critical issue that we need to talk about and walk through. So that's why on today's episode, I have Michael Buckbee, the co-founder of Noah Toa, who focuses on your online presence specifically in this AI generation. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Dave. This is really cool.
Wonderful. So I want to kind of start with the idea of like an online presence in the AI world. Kind of tee this up for us. What does that mean? What does that look like? And how has that kind of changed over the last like 10 or so years? Because I think a lot of our guests might be familiar with, you Google your name and you appear in the search results, or like you Google, you go on Instagram and you look someone up or whatever. But how is that changing over the last couple of years?
Sure. In the last couple of years, we're really seeing a rise of these AI search services. And if there's a way to, I recommend people thinking about these, it's that it's almost like you're asking a bot to do the Googling for you. So instead of you directly going to the search results, and we're all experts at this because we're online people, you search for something, you get the top 3 results, you kind of look at them, maybe you find something else, you do another deeper search and you go through this. And what's happening is that the AIs are doing that for you in a lot of cases, sometimes very explicitly, like they will pull up 100 URLs and look through them. And then, they give you a preset result or an answer from that. And that's a big difference. And partly what makes the difference of whether or not you are recommended or your competitors recommended is, brand. How does this AI think of you? Does it think of you as a leader for these particular topics, for these particular issues? Or does it think negatively of you for, past actions or past, data that is just collected online? So.
How is it making that determine? How is AI determining whether you are a positive contributor or authority in an industry or someone that they're going to suggest as to avoid?
So here's an example I bring up that's not on a personal level, but at a company level, which is Wells Fargo Bank. Wells Fargo is a huge bank in the U.S. They were also the recipient of the largest Federal Trade Commission fine of all time because they were doing some real nefarious stuff with like opening credit cards on behalf of users, and the users didn't know about it, and they were trying to make bonuses internally and stuff. A bunch of real bad things. And so if you go to Google and you type in, hey, Wells Fargo, you get stuff like, hey, where's the nearest ATM? How do I log into my Wells Fargo account? If you go to ChatGPT and you ask it, hey, should I use Wells Fargo? Or should I use my local credit union to open my banking account? It will say, well, oh, Wells Fargo, they've had some stuff. Maybe do an ethical review of them before opening an account with them, go through all of this. And it's that sort of thing that happens where if, you ask a general question to these AI agents of like, hey, find me the best bank to use for this kind of stuff, it's going to take that into account as part of this. Like, oh, is the best bank the one that had the FTC fine or is it the one without it? And that's a sort of, stark example of this. And I think there's lots of, gradation all the way down to, what you post personally, what you're interested in, how things are done. So.
Now, that was a kind of an example at a large corporation. Can AI do the same thing for individuals as well?
Oh, absolutely. We think a lot about online reputation management. And, you mentioned everyone's Googled themselves. It's the exact same thing. There isn't a real clear designation like categories in the AI stuff. It's just all, this giant haystack of data that they've, processed through. And, at some level, you can think of it as just like a text prediction machine, like, oh, Michael Buckbee. And, you give me an intro that's very similar to a lot of other intros I have had of like, oh, co-founder of Noah Toa. And that's what comes up. All of us personally, I think, need to think a little bit more about that and like what we'd like to come up. I have a very professional persona online. I don't post a lot of personal stuff. And we talk about, sort of even the changes in that. But yeah, it's very directly applicable to, people searching for you. Is this a good person to work with? Is this a bad person? Do they have positive things? What's the best things?
Yeah. Well, let's get into that then, because you kind of teased it there. What's kind of your background in getting into this kind of online AI reputation space?
Yeah, so for almost a decade, I worked in cybersecurity. I was director of demand gen at a big cybersecurity company. And so, trying to do outreach to cybersecurity professionals, trying to do that myself. And an interesting thing about the cybersecurity space is that it is very locked down as far as wanting to not be a target. Where if you say like, oh, hey, I'm the chief information security officer at this place, or I'm a security analyst at this place, well, that makes you a bit of a target online for all sorts of phishing attempts, for people to take over your social accounts and then spam all of your contacts with like, hey, I got locked out of my Active Directory. Can you do the backdoor to let me in? All this sort of stuff you just don't want to deal with. So a lot of people don't even list those sort of things as far as titles or what they do online. And so I just sort of habitually fell into that. And, coming out of that, working for that big company, I founded my own cybersecurity company and found I needed to, ramp that up. And then when I started getting into creating Knowatoa, really found out, oh, this is a whole different world. I need to do a better job of, communicating what it is I'm about, what it is I care about. And I think the big switch that went off in my head was switching from, oh, this is sort of a vanity thing to this is an educational thing, that I do have some interesting, experiences. I'm working with stuff every day people are interested in. People want to know about this stuff. And so it's not so much, taking a picture of my breakfast, stereotypically. It's actually like, oh, this is a worthwhile thing to share and that people respond to. So.
I want to like double click into that because I think this is a really important topic when it comes to people wanting to grow their personal brand or launch a personal brand. I think many listeners face this same struggle, if you will, where they have this friction between how they see social media and like online presence and them understanding that they also need an online presence. They might have kind of some bad blood with negative sentiment towards social media, and they think it's toxic and all that kind of stuff, and they see it in that way. But then, as you're saying, it's not pictures of your breakfast, it's not TikTok dancing, and it's not like manipulation. It's just education and amplifying a message and displaying your mission through content and your value through content. What was that initial journey like? I mean, if we can kind of more so hyper focus on it, what were some of the lessons learned in starting your creative journey or your content journey in starting to voice what you do, how you do it, who you do it for, and what were like some of the initial frictions that you felt, and what were some of the lessons learned?
Yeah, I think it is very hard to get attention, and I think especially when you're starting, it's very hard to get the ball rolling. There's just a ton of inertia, and a lot of it feels like sort of shouting into the void. So the things that really helped me were to set a goal, like, hey, I'm going to post a couple times a week, and it would just be helpful because I'm reading a lot of industry stuff. I'm reading a lot of white papers. I'm reading a lot of, all sorts of things. I'm working on creating new things that, have interesting charts and insights to them. And without that sort of goal of like, oh, well, I need to post something on Thursday, it wouldn't click to me that, oh, I should actually do that. I should take this and then, put it in. So that was very helpful. And I think even having the tools like Buffer or HubSpot or whatever you want to use that has like, oh, here's my schedule that's set out, just, sort of clicked in my brain like, oh, I should fill this up. So I found that very helpful. So
Nice. Now, Noah Toa.
yeah,
One, can you give us an idea of what Noah Toa is? And then two,
sure.
how'd you come up with the name Noah Toa?
Sure. So, like I said, my co-founder and I, we had a different cybersecurity company doing web application firewalls that we had created. We were in several like founder circles with other people, and a couple, I guess, 18 months ago, we were having a conversation of like, oh, I wonder what our company, like, I wonder what ChatGPT thinks of our company. And everyone else was like, oh, that's a funny question. We should try that out. And then everyone put it in, and the answers were all over the place. Like some people were being recommended, some stuff was wrong. And just kind of laughed it off. And that night I couldn't sort of stop thinking about it as I was in bed. And so the next morning I got up and I just wrote like the simplest script that hit OpenAI's API and got out answers, and then made a little spreadsheet for our company. And I did the same thing for a few friends and sent it off, and then didn't really think about it. And a week or two later, a couple of them that were doing like post-purchase surveys, which like, hey, I just like, they sent an email like, hey, how'd you hear about us? How'd you get started? And they kept hearing, oh, I found you on ChatGPT. I found you on ChatGPT. And they're like, hey, Mike, can we get an update on the spreadsheet? And so that was sort of where we started. And that's still what we do, which is that we track a bunch of questions about your company, what it does, is it doing the right things? What's the sentiment about it? All these different pieces, and try to give you, ways to help influence that.
Nice. And then I'm so curious where the name Noah Toa came from.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So in general, I like weird names for stuff. I think they stand out and they're more memorable. And as a startup, it's an easy lever to pull. And it's a portmanteau of like knowledge and, Krakatoa, this giant mountain. It's easy to say. There's no trademarks on Noah Toa, which is useful. And another, I think, weird quirk of the AI search space is, you may not even be aware of this, but just the literal names for things are still in massive flux. Like, do we call this, generative engine optimization? Do we call it, search generative experience? And we actually have a number of competitors who have named themselves in what is now an old way, where they've called themselves like, oh, I'm the, search generative experience tracker. And like, oh, it's no, Google's decided not to call it that anymore. Now it's a whole new thing. So better to come up with a more umbrella name for all the stuff we're doing. So,
And walk me through what's the type of experience and what can we get from Noah Toa if we wanted to check it out?
sure. So if there's a general theme of what's happening in search, I think it's that it's fracturing, which is that, for so long, Google was like 90+% of things. And now it's really splitting out to be search is being less and less of a destination. And it's more and more of something. You're just in ChatGPT working on something else, and then you ask a question that's search-ish. And looking at, there's a lot of surveys about how people are using these. more than half of things people type into ChatGPT are a search replacement. A lot of times it is just like asking a question, but it's also getting like personalized things. Like I want a personalized workout plan. So along with that, we try to help you track across all of these different services, which you could do manually, but it's a huge pain. And so we draw out sort of what historically people have been searching for on your site, figure out the AI equivalents of that, check it across, AI overviews, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, all these different services, and then give you recommendations on like how to actually, influence those results. And sometimes it's influences marketing, like, hey, we want to be considered the best in our niche. And sometimes it's just, oh, people are searching, like they're doing a buyer's journey all inside of ChatGPT. And if any of that data is wrong, we get disqualified and we don't even know about it. So a lot of times, we have a lot of SaaS customers. A lot of SaaS customers have buying points around like, are you HIPAA compliant? Are you GDPR compliant? And that's one of those like, you had better hope ChatGPT knows whether you are, because you'll be, again, disqualified and never know. At a personal level, like you might have a couple different offerings for your coaching, for your services. And if someone's looking for like, hey, I need a leadership coach because I just took on a CTO role, and that's not something they think of you, that ChatGPT thinks you do, that's a real problem.
How can we help GPT or AI know these things? Let's maybe hyper focus on individuals, coaches,
Sure.
consultants. So say we have a personal brand website. What are some of the things that we can do? Or just obviously personal brand website, our socials. How can we help give context to AI so that it knows that stuff?
So, my recommendations, because we do a mix of consulting with this as well, are always try to really directly answer the questions that people are asking about you. And then try to have a really smart distribution strategy around that. And so much of this is social, and I think goes back to the education side. And so another way of thinking about this is you can think about ChatGPT as like being someone on your team for your coaching service, and you're trying to onboard them and teach them what to tell other people that are be asking about it. And so you want to be able to have a piece of content that you can point to that says like really clearly in the language of like what it is that Mike does. Oh, I have 3 coaching offerings. And, to then take that very, almost blunt piece of content and then take that whole article and put it on LinkedIn. And this is what I mean about sort of smart distribution, that OpenAI, ChatGPT's owners, they have a deep relationship, like $13 billion relationship with Microsoft. Part of that is they get access to LinkedIn data to do training for their AI. Part of it is they have access to GitHub for their AI. So, that's a very clear line of like, oh, well, you should take this content, not worry about the duplicate SEO penalties, and we're just trying to push this out as many places as possible. Take that same content and put it on YouTube. Take that same content and, put it all these different places. And with that, we just see, the sentiment changing for these companies or these coaches and people. So
What can AI crawl so that it knows? So if I created a Instagram reel, for example,
yeah.
like can it crawl that reel transcript or whatever and understand context of that reel? You mentioned YouTube, LinkedIn posts. Like when we think about, oh, I want to start creating more content that helps train the AI into who I am, what I do, who I do it for, why I'm valuable. What are maybe, if we could maybe list the sources, types of content that AI can crawl, and then maybe if we could also like prioritize where we should be focused on, is a blog post more valuable than like a Instagram reel or something?
So in sort of rank order, I would say the most valuable thing is your site. You should have your site, just because we see the citations for most of these things. And oftentimes we see even direct questions about a company, large companies, not being answered on their site. And they don't get cited. And so some of that's a content thing, but part of it's also like a crawling thing, that there's lots of stuff. If you're using Cloudflare, if you're using some sort of security plugin, you can be blocking a lot of these AI bots from just indexing your site. And, we had talked about sort of the perception of social media and like, is it influency? Is it educational? I think there's a real piece of this as well we think of Google as like, oh, they index our site and then they show us the results and then people click on it and they come to our site. And a lot of the language around AI stuff is like, oh, they're scraping our site. And like, I wrote this article, I'm very proud of it. And now it's being scraped by AI for who knows what. But for the most part, it's a very similar situation where it's indexing it to learn for training. It's not just regurgitating it. And if it is in the sales context, that's kind of what you want. So blog is the most important. I think the other easy ones are LinkedIn, where you can post a whole article. You can post, videos. We know that's used. Lots of other sites, all the social sites are good. And, I mentioned, I think search is fracturing. Like you mentioned Instagram. Well, Meta has their own AI that's, more and more prominent in all their different tools. Certainly that helps influence that. That helps influence, Grok or Claude or these other services much less. And so, I do think you need a real multifaceted strategy for each of these. So.
Yeah. I mean, naturally, I'm in the business of content creation. My services, I interview experts, capture their responses in order to turn those responses into content. I'm trying to kind of thread the needle here is kind of an additional value to that. We translate their responses into video content mostly, but
Yeah.
is there kind of a secondary value of, okay, the content that we're publishing for you in this kind of Q&A style can also potentially be of value for this AI search, and or is there
Oh,
an
yeah.
opportunity to maybe translate that into other content types that could continue to support AI search?
I don't think potentially. I mean, 100% is valuable for AI search and there's a distinction as well, which is like we're saying AI search as if it's this like whole separate thing. But at this point, AI search is just search. And that's not me, self-interestedly saying that. I really feel it's Google. Google has decided this where AI overviews, AI mode, these are things they are pushing and are used by billions of people right now. So it's not as if this is like this far off
Separate.
sort
I
of
actually
thing.
just saw an update with Chrome where I think it's like an AI browser now. I think AI is just
Mhm.
natively worked into Chrome. So I don't even think it cares as much for you to go to google.com to do a
Yeah.
search. I think it's doing the search for you on the page that you're in, and it's giving it's looking at context between tabs that you have open. So it's like your secondary search AI buddy within Chrome.
Yeah. So if you find like you're trying to make like a fitness plan and you open a bunch of stuff for diet and for, exercise, you could then ask it like, hey, just summarize all this into a plan for me that I can do this week. And then it would just do that. Yeah. So Gemini is now in Chrome and we're seeing, a real blurring of all these different things. So.
Yeah. So how are you? I mean, Noah Toa, you mentioned that you are investing into your personal brand to
Yeah.
attract attention to it. Obviously, podcasting is part of that. Um, where are you on your personal brand journey in the sense of like, I need to attract people into Noah Toa? What are some of the strategies that you're implementing to try to bring attention to it?
So, I'm a developer, so I naturally sort of go to data sources. So something I did that was really popular on LinkedIn was we did this pay rank study, which, and used a bunch of AI tooling to do this, but I was trying to answer the question. And this was me trying to think of like, what would people on LinkedIn find compelling? And what I thought was things that would impact their own salary. And so what I did was this, I scraped a bunch of different job postings and then figured out whether or not they had AI tooling as one of the requirements. So if it mentioned like, oh, you need to have chat GPT experience. Oh, you need to, be familiar with these other tools. I did a bunch of classifications and then found out a bunch of interesting insights and then was able to use that for a bunch of social posts. And then also like, hey, if you want to get this full PDF report, follow me on LinkedIn and I'll DM it to you. A classic sort of LinkedIn strategy.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. There's a reason it's a classic strategy on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And, was able to show like, oh, actually roles that require AI tools and usage actually pay like significantly more than, roles without that. And some of that goes to those organizations being more forward thinking. Some of it is more like valuable if you're able to use those tools. So that was just like one of the
Yeah.
things I've
Now
done.
I
So
want to focus on that for a second because this is
yeah,
the like comment X to get Y
yeah,
strategy is really big right now. You see that a lot on Instagram because there's automation tools like ManyChat that can just
mhm.
automate the process for the DMing process. But like you see it in LinkedIn too. Unfortunately, as of today, I don't think there's any automation to like automate the DMing process for it. But um,
Well, just
go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I deliberately on LinkedIn didn't use any automation tools because I was trying to make this very personal. Like, and so when I would respond to people, I would actually respond in a way that they made sure, like, I actually read their profile. They knew that it was more than just like, hey, here's a link.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, Dave, want to say I really appreciate this. We talked before, like we have a couple mutual contacts on LinkedIn. I'd mention something about that, would say like, hey, I really appreciate any feedback you have on this, and actually like listen to the feedback and stuff, and to try to do more than just automate it to death, to really, try to connect with people. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, especially on LinkedIn when there's a lot of pitch slapping and such. So I like the content strategy of differentiating yourself, creating a moat in the industry by doing research, going above and beyond on kind of a campaign or a research or a hypothesis, and getting the data so that that is kind of your asset that no one else in that industry has because you did the hard work of figuring that out. And then knowing that that's going to be something that your audience actually wants. That's obviously priority number one. But and then compiling that information into an asset that then you go and promote on a social platform and say, here's what I did, here's why it's valuable, here's why you'll want it, comment X to get Y, and then starting that conversation that way. What were some did you find that the conversations that you had from that campaign were like qualified, that it led to anything additional? I mean, obviously these things are always kind of test and learn. Some people
yeah.
just want some freebies, other people are like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. What services do you have, kind of thing. So what were kind of some of the results that you saw from that campaign?
So this is more a business insight, which is that, I talked about, we had this like cybersecurity company that struggled. And so we switched over, decided we were going to do something else and decided to do Noah Toa. Part of that decision was that it is much more clear who our customers are with Noah Toa, where people doing SEO, people doing marketing, people who care about search marketing are much more legible in platforms like LinkedIn and other places than like the cybersecurity people. Certainly they're there. It's just harder to find them because maybe they're developers, maybe they're an assistant person, maybe they're a security person. And so I don't want to say like shooting fish in the barrel because that sounds very violent, but certainly all of these people were qualified, were at least interested parties, and part of that went to the content creation that it was about AI and search and trying to take the abstract sort of stuff we're doing with Noah Toa, which is like, oh, how will this affect your company and do all these things and make it more personally relatable. Like, how will it affect my salary? And so these were deliberate steps through that I think made the whole thing easier to know like who you're talking to and who you're creating this for. So
Love it. Michael, for what's like one thing that you want to make sure our audience walks away with remembering from today's conversation, kind of the big highlight or point of priority note?
I think very specifically for this, you should care how the AI services think about you personally, your brand. And it's easy to get caught up in like a lot of the technical stuff or these other things, and I'm not even saying use our tool, but you should at least go to ChatGPT and ask it, hey, what do you think about Michael Buckbee? Put your own name in, put your own course in, put your own stuff in, and just see what that is. And keep that as a point of reference that, like, hey, when you're making new content, will this influence that? Because especially now, it is the easiest it's ever going to be to influence and, to get the information right about your company and yourself. And these are growing at a tremendous pace. Like, it is obvious, again, just like Google has made the decision that, like, this is the future. It's just where we're all going. So at least get started there, figure out where you stand. And, I really encourage people to, try to put more stuff out there in the world. I think that's just one of the great things we do as humans is create stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, after this, I'm going to go chat GPT my name and do a little stress test there. Awesome, Michael. And if people wanted to learn more about you, more about Noah Toa, where would you like to send them?
Go to Noah Toa. You can put your site in and we do like a nice like preview of like information about it that's based on like real world search information. And again, just sort of, search is fracturing. You need tools to sort of help get your hands around it. And we're trying to be helpful that way. So.
Love it. Michael, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. And it's, like I said, this is very personal to me just because I have gone through this sort of flip in my head of like, keeping all this stuff at arm's length to really being bought in as a positive thing. So
absolutely.
Yeah, this is great.
Great. See you all on the next episode of Personal Brand Blueprint.